Today, you're going to get some of the what I call rules from the road, things I learned as a police officer that help me with my mental health and that can help you as well. Listen, when I became a police officer, it was 2005, and I still remember graduation, right? I go to Regina Airport to pick up my mother, Regina, Saskatchewan, and she sees me in uniform for the first time. She gives me a big hug. She says, "I'm so proud of you," and I'll never forget when I gave her that hug and we both had a little bit of a cry, and it was a special moment. I think back to the 6 months that I had in training before that, and how when I first picked up a gun for the first time, I was horrible at it, couldn't shoot. And it took me so long, and I thought, you know what, there's no way I can be a police officer. Doubted myself. And when I got in the police car for the first time, listen, I grew up driving small cars, being in small cars. My mom's first car was a Dodge Omni. I think the company's Nissan now, but that was the car she drove. And she drove me to school in that car, small car. My first car was a Nissan Sentra. Then I drove pretty small Acuras right up until I went to police college. And then they put me in this big Ford Crown Victoria. And if you've never seen a Crown Victoria, think like double the size of one of those small cars that I used to drive. And it was hard. And maneuvering it, the things we had to do in police tactics was difficult for me. Easy for a lot of people, but it was super difficult for me. And it literally came down to the last run on test day for me to pass and finally graduate that part of my training and then make it to the end. There were so many hard parts of training, getting up at 4 something in the morning, being outside in minus 55 degrees in Regina, Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan winters are no joke. But I think back now, and what I realize is that the hard things, when you accomplish them, make you happier. The harder something is, the more you have to work to achieve it, the happier you're going to be because you got there. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. If it was easy, you wouldn't appreciate it as much. So when you go through hard things, understand that getting through that, going over that, getting through that hump is what's going to make you happy. It's what's going to give you that pride. So don't run away from hard things. Don't run away from difficult things. Go ahead and try your best to get through them because it's going to make you a better person after. The second thing to remember is that we have to be willing to ask for help. I remember I attended a call. I went to a call at a Boston Pizza, and I remember the time that I got that call. We were on our own, riding in cars by ourselves, and that's the way it worked. Where I worked as a police officer, we didn't have partners in our cars. We worked alone, and we just didn't have enough people to partner up in cars. So you go to calls alone, and if you need backup, you call for backup. No big deal. And in that profession, especially, no one's afraid to call for backup if they need help. I got into this restaurant. I remember the call. There was a guy disturbing other people eating their food. And I walk in. This guy's like 300 pounds. And I immediately call for backup. And it was no big deal. My backup showed up. I needed the help. We had to get physical with this guy. We got him under arrest. All good. In that sense, the physical sense, we're never afraid to ask for help. If you're at the gym and you need help with a squat or a bench press or something heavy, you ask for a spot and people think nothing of it. But for some reason, especially in the first responder profession, they feel like, oh, I don't want to ask for help because, it's going to make me weaker. But you'd never say that if you were asking for physical help. It actually makes you stronger. When you're pushing a new personal best at the gym, asking for that help helps you get that new personal best moved, helps you get that new weight moved, and it actually makes you stronger. Well, the same thing goes with your mental health. Asking for help makes you stronger, not weaker. So don't be afraid that if you feel down, if you just want to talk to someone, it's okay to ask for help. You ask for help not because you're weak, but because you want to remain strong. Next thing to remember is to let go of negative people. They say that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and you're an average of everyone who influences you around you. So you got to really watch that. When I started in my policing profession, we were all given a field trainer for 6 months, and I'll be totally honest, my field trainer was not good with people. He wasn't good with me, and he used every opportunity to let me know that he knew more than me and that I was beneath him. And it got to a point 4 months into my profession, I almost quit because I was just so browbeaten and put down by this trainer. And fortunately, I remember going for coffee with my sergeant at the time, and I'll never forget, his name is Ken. And he sat down with me, had a coffee, and he said, "Hey, listen, you got a couple more months of field training, hang in there, and you'll be all right." And fortunately, he was right. I hung in there, got on my own, passed field training, and I ended up starting to hang out with other officers who were more like me, who were more supportive, and I flourished in my career after that training period because I got away from the toxicity. And in your life, you're going to have people that put you down, people that want to make themselves feel better at your expense, and you need to remove those people from your life. That's probably the main rule that's going to help you be successful. Get around people doing what you want to do and get away from people who are dragging you down mentally, emotionally, even physically. So remember that. Get rid of toxic people. Next thing to remember is that you got to be yourself. About a year and a half into my career, I decided I wanted to work with youth. So it makes perfect sense that I speak to students all over North America right now, and even globally in some cases, because I've always loved working with young people. Even as a police officer, I was that officer that loved going into the schools. I loved taking those youth calls. I loved sitting down with teenagers if they were having a domestic dispute and they weren't getting along with their parents. I always loved that. So I wanted to go into the division that specialized in helping young people. Now, here's the thing. Policing has this stigma on the inside, and basically in my office out in BC, all of the officers kind of had this idea that if you worked in the youth section, you weren't as valuable as another police officer. You weren't doing important work. You weren't doing the homicides, the drug investigations. You weren't doing the real police work. So when I started to mention to people, "Hey, I want to join the youth division," people kind of turned up their nose at me and they're like, "Oh, don't you want to do real police work?" And I thought, you know what? This is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And it was hard because I thought maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I should go to more serious units like homicide or drugs or some of these other units. But I realized that the hardest thing you're ever going to do in your life is be yourself when everyone is trying to make you someone else. And if you can hang on to what you want to do, what you're interested in, what you love, then you'll be way better off for it. Because I'm going to tell you, if you abandon what you really want to do and who you really are, eventually it's going to come back. It's always going to be there and it's always going to haunt you. So you may as well do it now, be yourself all the time. And the final thing to remember, I remember that I got into policing thinking it was going to be a 25-year career. And if you know my story, you know that I'm no longer a police officer, but now I'm a motivational speaker, I'm a coach as well. And what I realize is that life is about change. Change is constant. And if you go about your life thinking, I need everything to be the same, I can't deal with things changing, and you're rigid that way, life is going to be really, 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 really hard for you. Because change is constant, and the best thing you can do is just understand that, hey, sometimes things change, and always ask yourself in every moment, what's my right move right now? Because a lot of times people think ahead and they plan out their whole life and they are not used to change, and those people have a big problem dealing with change. But if you say, hey, what's my right move today? Let me do that. What's my right move right now? Let me do that. You stick to that, being present and doing the best you can in each moment, then when change comes, you'll handle it and you'll be all right. So I hope these tips have helped you. Use them in your life, and these are things that I learned from the road that help me to be mentally strong every day, and I know they'll help you too.